Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What can you learn psychically from a rock? Can a chair be a witness to a crime? If you get strong impressions of people or events from a so-called inanimate object, how do you know they're not just in your imagination?
Well, hey there, and welcome to the 115th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and that voice you just heard was that of my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. But before we get into those pretty unusual questions, it's time for our weekly paranormal contest, which is answered by human beings. Barbara Deering from Ottawa, Ontario, correctly answered last week's question. What 1966 UFO case became known as Australia's Roswell?
I thought for sure one of our Australian listeners would answer that one.
Well, it saves a fortune on shipping,
Well, postage is easier. Well, anyway, that's true. Anyway, the answer was the Tully UFO incident of 1966. This involved the alleged landing of a saucer-like craft near Tully, which is in Queensland in northeastern Australia, actually somewhat of a tourist area. That left a huge radioactive depression in the grass. It was considered among the most important pieces of physical evidence of saucer landings up until that time, and even up till today to some degree.
All right, and this week's question is, what alleged creature was the basis of the movie The Legend of the Boggy Creek? Man, that was a funny movie. If you can handle that, call us locally at 401-766-1240, or from anywhere in the U.S. at 800-449-1240. Or write to us at eno@onworldwide.com. If I don't announce a winner during the show and you still think you have a shot, drop a line to me at bennettbehindtheparanormal.com. The winner gets an autographed copy of my dad's latest book, Exo-Consciousness, Your 21st Century Mind.
I didn't write that. Did I? I remember I wrote it in my sleep like the guy we had. Well, anyway.
No,
that's actually by someone else. But
yeah. Wait, is it our guest or?
No.
Actually,
no.
I'm really.
That was written by last week's guest. It was Rebecca Hardcastle.
See.
Okay. Well, anyway, you get a free book to answer the question. Anyway, let's get organized here, Ben. Heather Woodward is an author, clairvoyant, and an accidental medium, and a psychometrist. Since 1996, she has performed tarot readings, paranormal investigations, and psychic profiling. She is the author of Ghosts of Central Arizona, a book about her personal experiences in some of the most haunted locations in Sedona, Jerome, Cottonwood, and surrounding areas in that wonderful southwestern state. Heather produced, edited, and directed the paranormal documentary Dead House, which regularly hits the top 20 best-selling supernatural DVDs on Amazon.com. And it's about a haunted house with a history of witchcraft located in La Conchita, California. She also hosts The Psychic Connection, a weekly radio show exploring such topics as psychic development, tarot, witchcraft, spirituality, and the supernatural. The one-hour show airs on Sunday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific on Blog Talk Radio. Over the years, Heather has been interviewed as a guest on television, film, radio, and print for her knowledge in the paranormal and psychic development realms. She teaches a practical psychic development class at Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona, and writes an online metaphysical and paranormal column for the Tucson Examiner newspaper. Her website, www.heatherwoodward.net.
Heather Woodward, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good this morning.
Oh, glad you're with us. And you do live in Arizona, is that correct?
I do live in Tucson.
Okay, very good.
Oh.
Okay, well, Ben's going to start us off.
All right. Well, I guess we're going to talk about psychometry today. And I'm interested to know, something in your bio. What is an accidental medium?
It just means that... I answer this question all the time. It just means that I don't go out... I'm not a medium. I'm not a typical medium. I don't do it for a living. I don't do it professionally. I don't do medium readings. Sometimes when I do psychic profiling, when I'm going out and looking at crime scenes or when I'm doing stuff like that, a spirit will come to me and start talking to me, or sometimes when I'm doing tarot readings or psychic readings, sometimes I'll have somebody come through. that needs to give a message, but I don't do it. I don't intentionally do it. I don't do it on a regular basis. So.
Oh, so in other words, it just sort of happens.
It just sort of happens.
Oh, you don't say, okay, I got you. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. All right. Oh, that makes sense. And what's psychic profiling?
Psychic profiling just means that what I found when I've done a lot of paranormal investigating, and I found that a lot of times I'll go into areas where crimes have happened, or when other things have happened, and I walk into a room or something, and I can kind of piece it together and figure it out. I haven't worked with the police because everybody asked me that, but I haven't worked with the police at all, but I have done some like missing person cases and stuff like that where I could kind of figure out.
Okay.
I've done it remote viewing, and I've also done it going to the place and just kind of.
Okay. Heather, I'm going to ask you to sort of to speak this a little bit more slowly and sort of right into the, I guess you're on a phone, because you know how it is, with broadcast. Let me just remind everyone our call-in numbers today here on WOON 1240 in southeastern New England and onworldwide.com. 401-766-1240 locally or anywhere in the USA, 800-449-1240 if you'd like to speak with Ben or me or with our guest, Heather Woodward. So, Heather, what is psychometry?
Psychometry, I call it an extension of clairvoyance. Basically, instead of looking at cards or looking at the person, you're taking an object and you're reading the energy from the object itself.
Okay. Now, what I remember, I first heard the word way back in the 70s when I started in this field, and I knew a girl who could literally pick up any object, and we would say she could psychometrize the object. She could read where it had been and all this sort of stuff. So I assume you do something like that. So what can you learn from an object?
Just about anything. A lot of times mediums use psychometry to pick up on the discarnate. They will, instead of just trying to tap in intravenously, they ask for an object like a ring or a piece of jewelry, because people tend to be attached to their jewelry a lot. And so what happens is you hold it in your hand and you're basically just getting a straight shot of the energy of the person, and then you can take that and you can connect it. Or, like, for instance, when I was in Jerome, I accidentally touched a wall in one of the hotels, and I got an impression of what had happened there, because it was the old wall, and it actually had part of it, the top part of it had burned down, and so when I touched it, I got the impression of the fire from the 1800s.
Well, that leads right into Ben's next question.
Sure.
Yes. How do you use psychometry?
Psychometry?
Psychometry. I'm really tired today. How do you use psychometry in paranormal research?
You can. A lot of times, the buildings that you go into, a lot of times, the areas that you go into are very, very old, and so it can give you some history. It can give you a little flashes of what actually happened there. That's all I use it for. Usually when I'm doing it for paranormal investigating, I kind of see who the people were that lived there, try to get some specific incidences, stuff like that, and then I write it down, and then I take it to the library or to the, to some kind of historical archives and try to find something that correlates. And if I don't find anything, then I usually just throw it out. But it does give you a little bit of insight into the people that were there. So.
Oh, okay.
Actually, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of a movie. It was M. Night Shyamalan directed it. It was Unbreakable.
Oh, yeah, with Bruce Willis.
Yeah, Bruce Willis in it, and I think, was it Samuel L. Jackson or was it Denzel Washington?
It's Samuel L. Jackson.
It was Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I'm interested. Well, Ben has one more question before I get into it.
No, go for it.
Okay. I was struck by something you said, Heather, that's if you pick up something from an object and then do a little historical research in a place like Jerome, that's a town in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that's so reputedly haunted?
It is pretty haunted, I have to tell you. I was very skeptical going in, and it's actually probably one of the most haunted places I've ever been.
Interesting. Okay, but when you go in there and you pick up some historical information and you look back and you can't find it in historical records, see, That I might question, because what we find, and again, I don't know really much about psychometry, really don't use it all that much, but we find that in our view of the paranormal universe, things that have not yet happened can be made evident through psychic means. In other words, when you encounter at least in our case, when you encounter a ghost, quote unquote, it can be someone from the future as well as someone from the past, but we don't look at it as anybody who's died, really. Now, we're weird, we voices crying in the wilderness, we look at it very differently, but this is 40 years of looking at this. If you do this for more than 30 years, you tend to start looking sideways at some of the old theories. So anyway, do you ever encounter events through psychometry that could be in the future, and then maybe you're just not giving them their due, or what? Or are we wrong?
I think part of it is your intention. Do you want to pull from the future, or do you want to pull from the past? I think a lot of us, just because we want to know the history of the place, we pull from the past. I mean, you can pull from wherever you want, and that's the great thing about it. There's also this thing called reverse psychometry that I just heard about, where other psychometrists or other psychics actually put thought into objects for later use.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole world out there where, you could totally tap into the future.
Oh, yeah, it's the first day of school. Oh, yeah. So what's the purpose of this reverse psychometry? Why would people do that? Play jokes on other psychics? Or what?
No, I mean, I think that if you want to, I think it comes down to if you want to put a piece of yourself into the world that's permanent, or until the object leaves this world, I think it's a great way to do it. I mean, if you want, and you know that somebody's going to be able to pick it up later, as a great way to crystallize history.
Kind of like writing on the dollar bills before you spend them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. I think there's other ways to permanently put your mark on the world, but I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's ingenious, actually, kind of a little bit, where, like a thrift store. Thrift store objects are great because, you buy them and you don't realize that there could be a spirit attached to it. You don't realize where it's been. It could have been in a house where a murder has happened, and who's to say that piece of furniture isn't going to give you problems in the future because of that? Because the energy, I believe the energy does seep into the wood or to the plywood or whatever it's made of. I do believe that. I believe it does leave some sort of indelible impression on the object itself, and so...
Well, no, that's extremely interesting, and we're going to get into that too. But do you want to cover that question there, Ben? On the
Oh, yes. This is your last one. Are there any dangers in doing psychometry, like unintentionally connecting with negative entities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, I am not a proponent of demonic or negative entities. I believe that
I'm glad to hear that.
I believe a good deal of psychic protection can keep you from that kind of stuff, and I believe, from my experience of the 15 years of doing this, I believe that the worst incidences I've had with dealing with the paranormal have been from normal people who have died. And so I think that's a lot worse, some of the stuff I've seen and heard and felt, than anything demonic out there. And I think that the whole demonic thing is so overly, it's ridiculous. I don't know.
Well, you stepped into that one, kid, because I can tell you, after 40 years, it's everywhere. Not again. You don't want to find stuff behind every rock, but in our work, people come out of the woodwork, and 9 times out of 10, we find out they have a legitimate problem. Because the question of mental illness arises, and that's a whole different subject. But if you're out there and not running into it, I envy you. Either that, or you're very naive.
No, I run into darker energies, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But not demonic. Demonic to me is very, very Christian.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, no, it's got baggage.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think negative entities, sure. There's a lot of stuff that comes home with you. There's a lot of, you go into a murder scene or something like that.
Sure.
Of course, you're going to pick up on that. And there are negative entities around it feeding into that. That's how it works, and you have to have psychic protection. I just don't believe in it's not that I don't believe in it, but I think is totally hyped.
No, I know. I now I understand what you mean. No, I agree. It's their theology is not the same.
Right, exactly.
That's what we call them, parasites.
Yes, that's what I call them too.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, because that's what we found. They're just in the trenches. So, okay. Yes. All right. Hey, give us the time. We'll get there. All right. Give us some examples of cases where you've used psychometry, what you found out, how you use it, that sort of thing. Examples of different objects you've gotten a lot of information from. Can you give us some specific examples of that?
Well, sure. I mean, I'll tell you the story about Jerome. Actually, that happened by accident. Sometimes I forget that you can touch people too and get information out of them. I generally don't touch people because of that, because I don't need to know more than I want to know. And one time I was in the Jerome, it was in the Connor Hotel, which was burned down a bunch of times later on after I did the research on it. But I was just looking in a glass case, and I accidentally touched the wall, and it was the first and only time that it actually felt like I was going to pass out, because I was like, whoa, like it was just a straight shot into my third eye kind of thing, and I forgot where I was just for a second, and I heard screaming and shouting, and I saw fire, and I saw people jumping out of windows, and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I totally...
Yeah. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought we lost you. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I had to go outside, and I got a little bit confused, because I was like, wow, that was really, really intense, and later on I found out that, of course, the place had burned down a couple times, and people did jump out windows, and it was a big deal.
Okay, yeah.
So, but other times, I mean, I've been in locations where, actually in the documentary, I do some psychometry, because we had a woman there who didn't die in the place, but she had lived there for like 50 years, and we didn't know anything about her family, and the family wasn't telling us much, even though they were having us investigate their house. So she had clothes there, so I actually picked up some of her clothes and found out all kinds of information about her that I double-checked with the relatives later, and then finally they were like, okay, we give up, we're just going to tell you because you're figuring it out on your own. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Heather, we have a call here from David Marsh. David is one of our show reporters and calls in now and then. We're always glad to hear from him. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning.
Good. Do you have a question for Heather? Or?
Yeah, I know this has been used. I do some shamanic practitioner work, and we have sometimes when we do healing work, we allow some of our people that we're working with to hold rocks and crystals, and then we journey with those crystals to see how we may need to help them. And I was just wondering about materials, crystals, other materials that may be better suited for psychometry than other materials.
Well, you know that the crystals have properties that actually enhance energy transfer. So, I mean, if you're holding crystal and you're holding something else in your hand, you're going to boost up the frequency or the vibration of the object, and so you're definitely going to have a better, just a more strong impression of what you're getting. I think that there are a lot of, like, wood, for instance, seems to take in energy very, very well because it's porous, and so anything wood you can read very well, like most natural products do. But like I said, but that's why rings are great. Like silver is great because it is so porous, and so silver is a wonderful conductor. Gold is as well. That's why people use jewelry so much, is because it's so much easier to read.
This obviously can get expensive.
Yeah. Well, I know, but if you're reading somebody else, you know, I always ask them to bring a piece of their jewelry that has some sort of natural made something in it, like silver, jewelry, crystals, anything that has natural stones in it, because it's easier to read. I mean, that's partly why they think, I mean, there's this great documentary about the Stanley Hotel, about it's on a mountain that's crystallized, and I forgot what it is, but there's some sort of crystallized stone in the mountain, and they think that is why the Stanley Hotel is haunted, is because it's like a great conductor. It's like there's these incidences that happen there, and there just happens to be activity there, and then you have this mountain full of this crystallized stone, that enhances it and just makes it big, and then it just doesn't go away. It just makes it, just keeps feeding it, basically. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be with just touching things. It can be an actual building that actually does the psychometry for you. You know what I mean? It's holding the energy for you. You're just walking into it and experiencing it.
All right. Go ahead, David.
No, that's it. Hey, thanks a lot, Paul.
Okay, very good. I was going to say you could stay on the line, but all right. This leads into something that we've been talking about on the show, Heather, with relative frequency lately, and that's the whole idea of stuff being able to be recorded, energy being able to be recorded on material objects and played back later, as in the sense of residual hauntings, as they're often called. Now, I know you work in other areas of the paranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other areas of the paranormal demand that we have a commercial break right now. So we will be right back at the other side of the bell curve, and stay with us on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency. Now from WOON Woonsocket and ON2, the all-news radio station on the Internet. This is news from the ON Newsroom.
New River Press is proud to sponsor tonight's segment of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benjamin Eno. New River Press offers the best in unusual New Age books. Stand by the side of tonight's host, Paul Eno, as he battles poltergeists and helps suffering souls and families in the critically acclaimed books Faces at the Window and Footsteps in the Attic. Plunge deeper into the paranormal with Paul and learn about its influence on human history, its action in our daily lives, and its ultimate meaning for us in the best-selling Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. Available now from New River Press, publishers of unusual books. Visit newriverpress.com, amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore. And set for release late this year in one of the most unusual books on the subject ever written, Paul gives us Dancing Past the Graveyard, What Ghosts Have to Say About God.
Okay, we are back Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM in the lovely Blackstone Valley of southeastern New England, and globally on onworldwide.com. Our guest, Heather Woodward, paranormal expert extraordinaire, and we're talking about the interesting art of psychometry. Now, before the break, excuse me, Heather, we were talking about the process that might be involved in psychometry, and that would presumably be some kind of recording of events or energy onto what are generally considered inanimate objects. Personally, I don't think there are any such things as inanimate objects, but because a subject that has come up on the show recently is the idea of residual haunting, stuff recorded on the environment and played back if your brain is so tuned, properly enough to hear it or see it or whatever. Now, I've said several times on the show, I was an early advocate of that theory in the 1970s, but I very quickly decided that it wasn't good enough to explain, mainly because I was able to interact with things that were very often legendary as being recorded on the environment, and turned out in my opinion, they were not, because I was able to interact with them and change them, and things of that kind. And the question arose, well, recorded on what? Many of our cases in the early days were outside and had presumably were reflecting things that occurred hundreds of years before, and so nothing was the same except for maybe some rocks and that sort of thing. In a house, I can see things might be, as you said, on paneling or plywood or whatever, but I'm still not sold on the idea anymore. I mean, what do you think could be the process by which these things are recorded on material items? I don't shut it off completely. I just don't see any evidence for it at this point.
Well, I think you have an interesting, it's an interesting point, because what we forget is that, past, present, and future are kind of happening all at once.
Absolutely.
So what happens is, I'm a big believer in quantum physics and the whole holographic theory kind of thing.
You're on the right show for that.
So I just went to a seminar on it, but the thing is the other thing we have to take into consideration is that's happening, and the other part of that is that, we give up a lot of energy ourselves, and we forget the whole dynamic of PK, or psychokinesis, and I think that plays a lot into it. So what happens is you're reading something that happened before, or in the future, so you're reading the energy of that place or that object, But what happens is you can totally change that by your own thoughts and perceptions. And so just because you're reading something doesn't mean that you can't alter it with your own PK or your own energy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's what I think EVPs are primarily, and that's why I'm not a big EVP person, because I totally believe in PK and I believe in group consciousness. And so I think a lot of times when we get together with other investigators and we're scared and we're in this dark place, you know, and we get all these EVPs like Get Out, you know, things like that, I'm thinking, oh, okay, so we've tapped into group consciousness now, and now we are effectively recording our own fears. You know what I mean? And
boy, I'll tell you, I must say, you know, all opinions are welcome on this show, and everybody's treated with respect. But it sure is good to find somebody who agrees with us for a change.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even knew that, but that's exactly what we have found very often. Because there is a big question. Again, when you've done this for 30 or 40 years, you really do begin to question the old ideas. And a lot of something that comes up very frequently on the show is, you know, who is creating paranormal phenomena? Is it us, or is it these, you know, people from other dimensions or whatever? And it's probably something of both. And that's why I sort of take EVPs with a pillar aside. Ben might have his own opinions on that.
I don't really care about EVPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very interesting. I think that they do seem to reflect our own fears. I heard one online the other day that happened to be recorded in a place in Connecticut that was my first case in 1971. And it was, I almost started to chuckle because it was just really, very obviously, in my opinion, what you just described. So, but let's take it a step further. I'm always examining my son on the air, which I probably shouldn't do. But Ben, you know, you and I have this whole thing started when it actually started with a cousin before Ben was old enough, and I wanted to see if blood relatives had the same reactions to paranormal situations. You know, vis-a-vis the energies that we've been talking about. There have been times when Ben and I have walked in a room together and both become faint. This sort of thing, and had the same or similar impressions. So Ben, does what Heather's saying match with your experience in situations like that?
I haven't really done a lot with EVPs. The only time we did that was...
I don't mean EVPs. I mean just our reactions, our physical reactions to...
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Stuff like in Connecticut and Maine and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if it wasn't so long ago, I could be like, oh, yeah, this happened.
Yes, well, you're so old. I mean,
no, that was like a year ago. I don't remember exactly what happened every moment.
Well, no, but I mean, your physical reactions. I remember getting almost sick.
Oh, yeah, I was like going to throw up that one time.
Yeah, I know. That's what made us look into possible shamanic abilities.
Let's not talk about that.
No, okay. I'm sorry. Anyway, the father-son thing. But all I'm saying is that I see what you're saying, Heather, and it's very interesting, and it certainly matches a lot of our own experiences as far as the process. Now, have you ever used psychometry or know anyone who has used it to help solve crimes?
Yes, all the time. A lot of psychic profilers actually use psychometry. That's why they always ask for a piece of the person's clothing. I mean, that's textbook. And that's because it's so much easier to tap into somebody's energy if you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And so that way you have sort of a control to feel, okay, this is somebody else. No, this is somebody else. You know, because everybody kind of vibrates differently. And so, I mean, you can get it off of clothes. I mean, literally, you can get it off of anything, and that's the great thing about it.
But is it admissible in court?
No, of course not.
Now, we had Annette Martin on, and she was the first person ever to be used as an expert witness, as a psychic, in a murder case. And we didn't have time to really get into that on the show, but we're going to have her back. But I guess the legal system doesn't know what it's in for. I mean, between psychometry and people like Annette Martin, maybe, I don't know, it might have to start changing some of the laws of evidence and admitting. And we have animal communicators as well. One in particular, Karen Anderson, who is a good friend of ours, is on the show now and then, talking about how she's now working with the police to get information out of animals who are witnesses to crimes. And so one can take it to the next logical step and think maybe with psychometry we could get information from chairs and tables that were witnesses to crimes. I mean, no joke intended.
No, I mean, it's an absolutely good point, and I think the thing with animals is ingenious because, I mean, I've done animal readings before, and they're so simple in their thought process. They don't do what we do and try to analyze it and validate it and, excuse me, and rationalize it. And so what you're getting is a very, very raw version of what happened.
Yeah.
And so I can see that as a great way to use as evidence. And, chairs are great. Anything, walls are great indicators of what happened in a house.
Yeah. All right. Well, now let me ask you this: how do you know an object is telling a real story, so to speak? Have you ever encountered I'm not saying a lying chair? What are we getting into here? But have you ever gotten information that you found is faulty?
I think that's with anything. Anytime you're doing readings, you're going to get not faulty information, but what I call is misinterpreted information.
Yeah.
When I teach psychic development stuff, I would say the first thing you need to learn is awareness. The second is objectivity, because that is important, because we do tend to process stuff and we do tend to judge. And so sometimes we misinterpret things based on our own personal experiences, and that's the difference between a good psychic or a good psychometrist and a bad one, is that there's objectivity. And I mean, most psychics only get about 70-60% of stuff right anyway. So again, it's because of interpretation. So I mean, there are going to be, for every 5 or 6 hits, there's going to be a couple misses. I mean, that's just part of it. You can't be perfect.
Yeah, sure.
So.
Makes sense. Okay, well, can you give us some examples of, we're interested in the police work sounds interesting, when you use this stuff. Can you give us examples of someone who, or yourself, who has used psychometry in a particular police case, without breaching any confidences?
Well, I've never done police work. I've just done mostly private stuff. I can tell you that I did go on someone stuck me on a 23-acre ranch and said, okay, find the crime. And I'm like, hey, that's not fair. You know what I mean? Like, I got 23 acres to figure out here.
Yeah.
But what I did was, I picked it up psychically, and then I did use the fence posts and other stuff around. I touched the building, all kinds of stuff, just to kind of get some more impressions, because you can only get so much from just standing there and trying to figure it out. And then, you need more context clues. And so that was a very interesting case because, like I said, I was stuck on 23 acres, and there's buildings and stuff there, but who knows what really happened. And so, I went right to the place, and they're like, okay, that's good. And then nobody said anything to me. They're just kind of like, oh, so you're picking this spot, huh? And, so I touched stuff and tried to figure it out. And it's just part of the process, I think. I wouldn't use psychometry all by itself, because there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
It's just one more aspect to get the bigger picture.
I see. Okay. Now, rather than reading objects through, so I know we are kind of sticking with psychometry here.
Oh, no, it's totally fine.
Yeah. Rather than just reading objects, have you ever had the feeling that you've actually been in touch with a being through this object?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. I was actually on a radio show, a live radio show in a studio, and I said, yeah, I do psychometry, and this lady just handed me, the co-host handed me a bracelet. She said, okay, read this on air, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that's they didn't warn me, so I was like, okay, so I just kind of do it on the spot, and I connected with her mother right there, because it was her mother's bracelet, and her mother was saying, you need to forgive yourself, and it was a very, very personal message, but she stuck me in this position, so I couldn't, I was trying to be nice about it, but at the same time, she's there and she wants this message to be portrayed, and so you just do it. And I made the lady almost cry, and so I felt really bad.
Wow.
But, yeah, you do. If, something like that, where she had an issue with her mother, and her mother said, oh, I have this one moment to get this through to her. Again, it was sort of an awful experience, but at the same time, it was very cathartic for her.
Yeah.
And so people go, oh, you have my object, and you're tapping into their energy, and they're like, it's like a ping. It's like, ping. So they do come forward, and they do try to talk to you if they can. So you get all kinds of weird messages from people.
Well, that's funny, because just the other night, I was told this, I guess, a Travel Channel show I was on, the Curses of New England, was replayed, and I always find it a shock, because I was a lot thinner then, and I said, oh my gosh, and you see it again, and it's kind of a shock. But the question they asked me on the air was about haunted objects so-called.
Yes.
And the center of the question was down here in Newport, Rhode Island, which is, as you know, is full of all these beautiful mansions that the rich people built in the 1890s. And there's Belcourt Castle, which has a lot of items that are allegedly haunted. And they asked, well, how does this work? And I suppose you could say the same thing with psychometry in a way, apply the same principle. From looking at it from the viewpoint of quantum mechanics to some degree, you can see a consciousness wave spread out across space-time. And I compare it with sort of a vinyl record, like an LP, with lumps in it. Yeah. That's your consciousness. The lumps are the things you know, the people you love, the people you know. And an object is always going to be part of that consciousness wave of a particular person, and the energy is that seems to be a good analogy to me of how that energy is carried on and how it communicates with someone like a psychometrist or is so-called haunted. When you move it around or do something, you can set off phenomena, which I've seen. I had a doctor come to me, no nonsense kind of person, who said that her house was turned upside down by moving an object out of the basement that had been there when they bought the place, and then all hell broke loose. So it seems to be the consciousness wave thing taken to its logical or illogical conclusion. So what say you?
I think that's a good way of putting it, because it is kind of like a wave. You are kind of riding a wave. You're just picking up on it and going, oh, okay, this is the frequency that I want to be on. And again, everybody kind of vibrates on a different level, so you just sort of pick up on it. And again, the easiest way to do that is by just touching something, because you have a direct link. It's like you feel that wave, and then you just kind of then you just suck it in and take in whatever information you have. The one thing that I noticed about that, though, especially when you're dealing with deceased and loved ones, is that a lot of times that just from personality consciousness, you have what the other people perceive the person to be. And then you have the true discarnate there who has his own perception of who he is or she is. And so a lot of times reading that kind of energy, you have to discern kind of whose perception you're pulling from, because you do. And so a lot of times people will go, well, I didn't know that about that person, or that doesn't ring true for me. And I say, write it down, because a lot of times they're going to find that the other people are going to have that perception of them, or they're going to find something new about that person. And so that's when mediumship and psychometry and all this stuff gets a little tricky, because a lot of times people just don't know how the other person thinks of themselves. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Ben, did you have any more questions about that before we move on to Heather's book and stuff?
No, I can't think of anything. I think of something, I'll just...
Okay, by all means. Okay, Heather, tell us about your DVD. It sounds really interesting.
The DVD is really just raw investigating. We went to this house, we investigated it for about 4 months.
Yeah, Dead House, is this called? Yeah,
it's called Dead House. We investigated for 4 months, and we came up on this stuff, and there was some witchcraft that happened in the house and some other things. And we people that were not psychic or not purportedly psychic were seeing things and feeling things and hearing things, and we're going, what the heck is going on with this house? And so we asked about some of the things that were happening in the house, and everybody was kind of vague, and then we kept going and we kept figuring out this story, and it's just a really interesting house. For those people who want slick production, this is not it. This is a bunch of real investigators going around with Sony night shot cameras, and so it's kind of cataloged by room because we did so many investigations. But it's interesting from the point of view that you're really seeing it all happen. It's kind of like we're just kind of figuring it out as we go along. And the other aspect of it is that we do a lot of towards the end, because we knew the place was haunted already and we had enough evidence to show that it was haunted, we did a lot of experimental investigating. We used those glow balls and some other stuff. We used to raise the vibration in the place. We used singing bowls. We just started doing other things just to see. It's not in the movie, but one time we brought a Jacob's ladder just to see what it would do. We just kind of used it as a experimental ground, and so people either love that aspect of the movie or they hate it, because they're like, what are you doing? You're breaking protocol. I'm like, no, I'm not. I was there for 4 months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how about your book, Ghosts of Central Arizona?
That is mostly about, it's about Jerome, Cottonwood, Sedona, that area, Flagstaff. It's the northern central Arizona area. Basically what I did was the first 50 pages are like a primer for people who haven't investigated or kind of new to it, and I put a lot of theories and stuff in there because the one thing I noticed is people just don't read. So I put some stuff in there about Persinger and EMF and, theories and just everything that I could come up with in just 50 pages, so it's not everything, but it's enough where you get like a bite-sized chunk of how to use equipment. And then the second, I really go into the difference between psychic and technical investigating and how you can bridge the two. You can do one or the other. And then the second part is really just history of the places. I'm really big on history. And
all right, as am I, yep.
I love history, so I'd like to put it, and people should know where they're going. I think that's important too.
Absolutely.
So I do history, and then the ghost stories, and then a lot of the places. I didn't go to every single place, but a lot of the places I went and did my own investigating. So you get kind of three perspectives of things.
Well, that's excellent. So many of the books are rehash stories, and to have an actual book by an actual investigator with a thoughtful approach to the subject, as they say, is really wonderful. Okay, that's and people can get the book and the DVD on Amazon and where?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. You can go to my website, heatherwoodward.net.
Okay, and your website, heatherwoodward.net, of course, very good. All right. Well, Heather, it's been a real pleasure to have you. This seems to be Arizona weekend on Behind the Paranormal. We have a 4-hour marathon here on the last weekend of the month, and I guess two of it's being spent on Arizona. We have the Phoenix Lights phenomenon. Tomorrow night's show on CBS, so that's going to be quite interesting as well. But you've been a very pleasant guest, and
thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, Heather Woodward, everybody. Heather's
what is with Arizona? Everybody's from Arizona.
Everybody's from Arizona because a lot of things are going on in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things in Arizona that we can.
There are.
Yes.
And you're going to be there in April. Which
April vacation.
Can't wait to see your reactions and hear about your adventures.
It's going to be nuts. Navajo reservations.
On the Navajo reservation and stuff. Talking to medicine men and stuff. And
it was only 13 other people from my school. That's
right. Yeah.
That's 3 guys and 10 girls. It's going to be nuts.
Well, I wouldn't mind that one because don't tell Mom I said that. Anyways. But in any case, Arizona, the whole Southwest has been very active. And, of course, that's where the whole Roswell thing occurred, supposedly, in 1947.
Yeah, it's also a really diverse landscape, too, besides all the nuclear testing and all that. Or was that Nevada?
Well, nuclear testing, a lot of that took place in Nevada and New Mexico. And, matter of fact, when I was growing up in the 60s, they would say, don't eat the snow. Because it's radioactive from all the nuclear testing in the Southwest, and we didn't think it. I don't know. I still ate it. Maybe that explains a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't eat the snow today either because of all the toxins in the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's snowing right now outside.
Yeah.
But I had a theory, too, and this leads back to the whole cattle mutilation thing.
Yeah.
Now, we've never personally looked much into that, but obviously it's a big thing. And, again, farmers in the Southwest particularly finding cattle mutilated and seeing UFOs and finding that cattle have been almost surgically tampered with.
Yeah.
Organs have been removed, lips, eyes, very strange, very strange stuff. And one of the theories that I tended to agree with, and I ran into it when I was working in intelligence, was that the government is aware of the contamination from nuclear testing in the 50s, that this is where most of the country's meat supply comes from, is in the Southwest, and they are constantly testing these cattle to see how contaminated they really are. Now, that's probably going to get us in trouble saying that, but that's only a theory. I have no way to prove it, no idea. But to me, it's in a way more believable than aliens coming down and
cults.
Stacking on cow lips.
Well, cults is more believable than UFOs.
Cults, true. Yeah, but how
many cults do you know of that?
I know a lot of cults, but most of them are lunatics, and they're not well organized. And
yeah, it's like that. thing, Life of Brian, with all the guys that are standing on the podiums and they're just like yelling stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, the Monty Python film. But life is often a reflection of Monty Python in a way. It's
crazy
commentary on how disorganized we can be.
I know.
That's it. So, but in any case, that's it. But things are going on in the Southwest, and I'll mention this tomorrow night too. But when we were flying to San Diego to do that program in 2007, you were on one side of the plane, I was on the other, and I happened to be on the side where the Phoenix lights were visible. These are apparent UFOs that literally hovered over the city, and we're doing the show tomorrow night because it's the 13th anniversary of that phenomenon. And not only were these lights hovering over the 5th largest city in America for nights in a row, there was a triangular-shaped or a number of triangular-shaped UFOs that were flying over the entire state.
Yeah.
Thousands of people saw them. Hundreds of people got photographs and videos. So the thing is undeniable. It was covered on network news and this sort of thing, and then it kind of died away.
Yeah.
But our guest tomorrow night, who we'll talk about in a minute here, is a doctor, an MD, who lives up on one of the lovely hillsides or mountainsides overlooking the city, and these things were right off her deck. And she got photos of these things hanging, they're like orbs and lights hanging right off her deck, and then, of course, they're over the city and doing all this stuff. So it changed her life, and I want to find out how a bunch of pretty lights turned into a complete life-changing experience for this doctor and a number of other people who've dedicated themselves to world peace because they feel as though we've been contacted by very nice aliens.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
We did another show on that before.
Yeah, we did.
But we didn't get quite as into it as we're going to.
We're going to be talking to Miss Phoenix Lights here. Okay, tomorrow night we got Kyle Dayton, our very good reporter from that area, and we have, as I'll mention in a minute, the Dr. Kitai, I believe her name is pronounced, who has written a book on this subject. Anyway, let's go on here. We have, we had a email here for Heather, which we didn't read. Well, I'll wait till the next time she's on. But, anyway, I'll read it. It is very interesting. And we'll get an answer from Heather later. I'll send it to her by email. This is from Marilyn Krause in Boston. You always read our emails.
Right. Oh, so we're just going to read this anyway?
Heather's listening, wants to call back and answer. That's fine. We got a few minutes.
Oh. Well, for Heather Woodward, my mother was able to do psychometry.
Psychometry.
I can't pronounce this. No, I need more caffeine. Anyway, first, can this run in families? I can't do it, but my sister can. She is so sensitive that she sometimes picks up objects and burns her hands. Does that happen to you? And
wow.
Yeah.
I knew someone that happened to. Someone who was very good, and they picked it up only once. Picked up a certain kind of a rock, and it looked like a native, I don't know, not a projectile point, but some sort of old hammer that the natives would have used around here. Burned her hand. You could see the red marks on the hand. And she came to the conclusion that this was used to kill people. It was some kind of a weapon.
Oh, nice.
So there you go. I don't know. Well, anyway.
That's a nice note to end the show on.
Oh, it is. So, anyway, I'm going to send this to Heather and see if we can get an answer. We'll get Marilyn an answer, and we'll answer it on the air as well. I'm sorry, we should have left her on the air long enough to do that. Anyway, again, I just want to remind everyone our show phone number has changed. This is not the call-in number. It is the day-to-day number you can call to leave ideas, make suggestions, or make contact with Ben and me. It's 401-651-7732, and again, that is not for on-air calls. 651-7732 in the 401 area code. So, many thanks to our producer, Brittany, who's with us again this week. And we'll see you next week, Saturday, March 6th, right here on ON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And our guest will be Laura Zollman, a nutritionist who, through hypnotism, stumbled into up to 50 of her own past lives, or so she believes. Now, we went up and actually met with Laura.
That was fun.
A few weeks ago. Very lovely, lovely person.
And we almost got lost.
Yeah, well, we always get lost.
Yeah, well, no matter where we go. We could be going to the market or something.
So much for our psychic power.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. And
this is our Behind the Paranormal Marathon Weekend, so that means 3 hours of us tomorrow. What fun! Hear us on our 2-hour internet show at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on www.achieveradio.com, when we'll visit with paranormal expert and shaman Sandra Ingerman. On our regular Sunday show tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 Pacific on CBS Radio and www.newskyradio.com, our guests will be UFO experts Kyle Dayton and Dr. Lynn Kita? Is that how it's pronounced?
Kitai, she says.
Kitai.
Yeah.
Kitai, all right, that works. Both experts in the ongoing UFO flap over Arizona and the so-called Phoenix Lights.
You know, Kyle calls in as a reporter. It's great. And she'll give us chapter and verse. This happened over this town in Arizona. So many people saw it. They got photographs. The photographs are available here. I love it. She should get a degree in journalism. Maybe she does have a degree. I don't know, but she's an awfully good journalist.
Maybe she does. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, check our show website at www.behindtheparanormal.com and your local radio schedules for cities where CBS carries our show and the websites where you can hear us from anywhere. And remember, you can always get free podcasts of all shows along with the show schedules and guest information at behindtheparanormal.com.
And so, we will, in the meantime, we leave you with this quote from the English writer Charles Caleb Colton. True friendship is like sound health. The value of it is seldom known until it be lost.
Indeed.
That's kind of awesome, actually.
I think it is, too. You know, some of these things, it's not the thought, it's how well it's put.
Yeah, there was like this dude that came in and talked to our senior class. I thought it was going to be about cap and gown or something, random thing like that. Okay. Nope, dude was just talking about like personality and stuff and values. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool, considering like everyone here is like looking down at me for going to CCRI.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, you know.
Well, there's nothing wrong with CCRI.
Of course not.
No, not at all. But yes.
Plus, it honors our year-long contract with CBS. We don't have to set you up some other studios.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't have to like call in and be like.
I don't have to give up having you at home. I love having you at home.
Yes. And then I can just wake up at like 4 in the afternoon and be like, ugh, not have to worry about going to high school. Oh, high school.
So what were you saying?
I forgot what I was saying.
Okay, well, it was about the man who came in to talk to you.
Oh, yeah, that dude who was I said he was just talking about like personality and things like that.
Oh, I see.
He was like, don't worry about it. Like, college is just
absolutely
that
right.
Thing, that
that's
kind of
right.
thing, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's what's in the head and in the heart that counts.
Right up.
And so that's why we try to leave you with an inspiring quote every week.
Yes.
Anyway, folks, Behind the Paranormal, and we will see you next week and tomorrow.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.